بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
We start with the intention of learning and teaching, benefiting and being benefited, seeking the reward of Allah, His pleasure and acceptance. We ask Allah to bless our gathering and to make it one surrounded by angels, enveloped in mercy, and which sakina descends upon. Allahumma ameen. Maybe a word of motivation before, and I think we should have started with this last lesson. Seeking knowledge is one of the most important deeds and forms of worship a Muslim can perform. It is so important that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the one who seeks knowledge or teaches it will have everything in the heavens and the earth pray for their forgiveness, even the fish in the ocean. So the entire existence, all of creation, pray for the forgiveness of the person seeking knowledge when they're engaged in this knowledge. Why? Because of how beloved this act is to Allah Ta'ala. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the malaika, the angels, lower their wings out of humility to the student of knowledge because of how sacred that ritual, that devotion is. And so seeking knowledge is really one of the greatest forms of worship a Muslim can perform. It is obligatory with regards to the obligatory acts of Islam. And if we were to categorize knowledge or rank the types of knowledge, sacred knowledge, religious knowledge is the most important because of the benefit. Religious knowledge is not just a career or a skill that you secure in this world, but Islamic knowledge is knowledge by which you draw close to God, by which you fulfill the purpose of your existence, by which you prepare for your standing and reckoning before God, by which you prepare for the afterlife, by which you define your purpose in existence. This is the most important knowledge. There's nothing more important. And then from there on, scholars, they categorize other forms of knowledge. They say the second most virtuous knowledge is medicine, because you're saving human lives. And there's nothing more important than the human soul, than the human life. After the human soul, than the human life. So medicine and healing, be it medical or be it psychological, be it whatever form of healing we provide to people, that is considered right after, second to sacred knowledge, and so on and so forth. Every knowledge, its worth and value before God is determined by the benefit it offers to society. And so Islamic knowledge is the most important knowledge. It is the most supreme out of all knowledge that a person can acquire. Now, in our class, we're studying, our scholars have discussed, out of the Islam, the various types of religious knowledge a person can acquire. You can learn hadith, you can learn fiqh, you can learn tafsir, you can learn language and grammar, you can learn history, you can learn a variety of knowledge. They said the most important and most virtuous knowledge and most beloved knowledge is knowledge of faith. Iman, knowledge of Iman. That is in existence the most important knowledge a person can acquire. Because it is the knowledge by which a person knows God, knows the messenger, establishes their beliefs, establishes their worldview, and based on that, they engage with all the different rituals of Islam. Everything else about Islam is meaningless without faith. Right? If you're just making salah but there's no iman, then what's the point of that salah? Well, if you're praying zakah and there's no iman, what's the point of that zakah? Right? And so the quality that gives all of our worship meaning is knowledge of the faith that we have. And so in this class, we are pursuing that knowledge. And so we hope from Allah Ta'ala that He makes this gathering of ours the most sacred of gatherings, the most noble of gatherings, the most blessed of gatherings, and that this effort that we make for this hour and a half that we study, that Allah Ta'ala rewards us, accepts it from us, blesses us for it, as we seek to know Him and know His messenger and know the religion that He has set down to us. And so we ask Allah with that intention that He makes our gathering of that like, and that He accepts our intentions and increases us in knowledge, understanding, and iman. Allahumma ameen. So we'll proceed, inshallah, with our lesson. Just a quick recap on what we spoke about last week. Let me see. There we go. So we went through this. We went through the fitrah and what the fitrah means. We went through the revelation, the ayat of Quran and the prophetic ahadith that speak on fitrah. We made a clear distinction between fitrah and Islam. We mentioned that Muslims oftentimes, even knowledgeable Muslims, people who are... Brother, I don't know if you're speaking up. If you're not speaking, iPhone 3, if you could mute yourself if you're not speaking. Thank you. And so we spoke about the fitrah, what the fitrah means. We mentioned a common mistake, that a misunderstanding that people have, using Islam and fitrah interchangeably. And we said they're not the same. Fitrah is one, Islam is another, and they're not the same. And so the phrase a revert is actually incorrect. We shouldn't use that phrase. It is they converted to Islam. A revert, I think, actually minimizes the sacrifice they've made in embracing Islam. And so the convert is a more appropriate word or term for a person who embraces Islam. Continuing, yes, we... Is it moving? Sorry, this computer's a little weird with what I see on my end and what y'all see on your end. We took the hadith and the ayah, establishing that fitrah is the original disposition of human beings to believe in one God. And that's established in the prophetic tradition. It's also established in the Quran. Now, this knowledge is something we all have. Right? Even a non-Muslim earlier today, I had a conversation with a non-Muslim woman, and she started speaking about this need to help people, and for her life to have meaning and purpose. And she's just like, I need to do this, right? To have this, and I thought, and I kind of engaged her. I'm like, is this something that somebody told you, or is this something just you felt inside? She said, I feel the need. This gives me meaning. It makes me happy. And that's fitrah. Nobody teaches you to be nice. It's in you. And nobody teaches you to know God in the initial kind of belief, the fundamental belief at our core. It's in us. What people teach us only further grows that belief that we have, that iman is already in all of us. Interestingly, the lady was like, she's not Muslim, and she grew up Christian, but really doesn't identify as a Christian. And she's like, my religion is kindness. Kindness is my religion. And we started speaking about religion, and she's like, I have no issue believing in God, but my experience with religion has been so traumatic that I can't see myself identifying with a religion. But believing in a higher power, yeah, that's fine. I have no problem. It makes sense. Kindness, morality, that makes sense. Compassion, that makes sense. These are things that are intuitively right to me. But because of her experiences, she's like, I just can't associate with a religion. And so I didn't want to, of course, try to enforce my beliefs on her, as that was not the space for that. But we're just having a conversation and exchanging thoughts. But the fitrah is a common ground between Muslims and non-Muslims. That's actually one of the benefits of fitrah. Because you can talk to anybody about fitrah. Believing in God, believing in a higher power, believing in morals, believing in justice, compassion, kindness. We all agree. Every human being has this to a certain degree. So it's actually a common ground between Muslims and non-Muslims and people of all religion. I also wanted to add, Brother Adnan, last time he asked in the chat about does fitrah extend to Hinduism? And I said that fitrah doesn't really extend to any religion, right? Fitrah is just the notion that we believe in God, we believe in the omnipotence of God, God being all powerful or omnipresent, God being all aware. We believe in this, right? God being compassionate. The fitrah believes in all these things. It knows these things intuitively. But it doesn't identify with any religion. An interesting benefit, a note that I heard from one of the scholars, he shared that all religions, because the fitrah at its core believes in tawheed, right? It believes in oneness of God. All religions have some tawheed. There's tawheed in every religion in some form. There's tawheed in every religion in some form. Every religion believes in a supreme God above all deities. The one mighty God that even if paganism, even if they worship multiple gods, they believe in some supreme being. That's the creator and the one that's in control of everything, that can subdue everything. They believe in that. And so all religions have some form of tawheed in them. It's just that they associate partners to God in their shirk. But there's, I guess you can say, that tawheed, right? Why do all religions default to a belief in one supreme being, an ultimate supreme being? Because the fitrah. The fitrah desires one ultimate God. So if we look at Christianity, having Trinity, for example, they believe in one God, but they've created shirk with their tawheed, where they put three in one. If we look at Greek mythology or Norse mythology, they believe in Greek mythology, they believe in Zeus as the supreme God. And then they have all his siblings and his spouse and these other lesser gods and so on and so forth. But they believe in one supreme being. If you look at Norse mythology, same thing. Odin being the supreme God that they believe in, and so on and so forth, right? The fitrah calls human beings to believe in one supreme being. If you look at religions of the different nations across South America or South Africa or different parts of the world, there's this belief in one ultimate being, and that is the fitrah. The fitrah calls people to this. Some of the scholars would say, if you left a human being on an island without any teaching, nobody was to teach a person anything, and you let that community just develop, and they would adopt a deity on their own. That is how intuitive belief in God is. The people don't have to be taught. They default to believe in God. And that is why atheism or agnosticism, right? Atheism being that they don't believe in anything. They're just like, we're particles, chemicals, and that's it. There's really no meaning to any of this. And agnostics are more, we call them in Arabic, la adriya. Atheists are more like inadiyya. So inadiyya is like they just rebel against religion. La adriya is like, we don't know what the truth is. So they're agnostics. We don't know. There's a supreme being, yes, that makes sense, but we don't know. Or that supreme being has no need for us. He's there, he created us, he provides for us. When we need him, he helps us, but he has no involvement in our lives. And so and we don't know who he is. And so they're called la adriya. We just don't know. We don't know who that God is. And if there is a God, it's up to some of them might say. And so that's another form of this. But atheism is actually a minority of human beings have believed in atheism throughout history, and even till today, human beings, the people who believe in atheism are actually a minority, right? The default belief of humanity Muslims and of course non-Muslims has always to believe in some type of God. They believed in a God. There was never the notion that there's no God. This was a very abnormal belief, right? And so if you look at human societies throughout Asia, Africa, South America, North America, all the different civilizations and all the different communities of human beings always believed in a God. All of this is showing what? The fitrah. There is an intuitive, natural knowledge and awareness of God and God's greatness, God's compassion, some of the attributes of God implanted in all human beings. Is that clear, straightforward? Yeah? Okay. We talked about the primordial covenant, Ibn Taymiyyah's position. I'm just going to go through this. Okay, I think this is a good place to start. All right, let's start here, inshallah ta'ala. Fitrah and knowledge. All right. So fitrah is a source of knowledge. The title of our slides is The Epistemological Role of the Fitrah. What does epistemology mean? I think we answered that last time. Epistemology is how we acquire knowledge, right? What are the methods by which we acquire knowledge? How do we know things? And Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he made an argument that the fitrah is a primary source of knowledge alongside revelation, Quran and Hadith, and reason. And he seems to be the first one to kind of establish the fitrah as an independent source of knowledge. He championed that position. The other schools of theology, the Ahl al-Kalam they call them, they relied mainly on reason, the aql. Reason and revelation. They said revelation is knowledge, external knowledge, and reason is internal knowledge. It's knowledge that your mind produces based on rationale and logic. And revelation is external knowledge that your mind receives and processes. And so the school of Ahl al-Kalam, their epistemological kind of approach was that we have reason and revelation. They didn't really see the fitrah as a source of knowledge. They saw the fitrah more as something that is cultivated. So they say we have to purify the soul, develop the soul, so on and so forth. We're born with innate qualities of good and bad, evil and righteousness, and we develop it. So Ibn Taymiyyah, he championed this position that the fitrah is a primary source of knowledge. He argues that the fitrah provides intuitive knowledge, a direct and unmediated understanding of certain truths. This intuitive knowledge is considered more certain and reliable than knowledge acquired through reason or sensory experience. And that's really, I think, one of the strong arguments that he makes, that the knowledge of the fitrah is more certain and more reliable than knowledge acquired through reason or sensory experience. It's knowledge of the subconscious. Nobody is trying to persuade you. You know it in your gut that this is the truth, and you live by it. And so he considers the fitrah as a source of knowledge that we should rely on when giving da'wah, when teaching, giving da'wah and inviting people to Islam. Invite their fitrah, address their fitrah, instead of just trying to approach this as an equation of reason. Address their fitrah and address the humanity in them and try to reach that and connect with that. And if you do, that is what will push them to Islam. And really, if you look at this from a practical sense, the majority of converts appear to have adopted Islam because of the fitrah, not because of logical arguments. It wasn't rationale that brought them to Islam. And that's part of it. But it wasn't rationale only. The majority of what brought people to Islam was that the fitrah is in line with human nature. It makes sense. Continuing, fitrah and the existence of God, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah argued that the fitrah naturally inclines humans towards belief in God. He criticized the kalam, cosmological arguments being overly complex and unnecessary. According to Ibn Taymiyyah, the fitrah provides a direct and intuitive awareness of God's existence, making elaborate proofs redundant. So here's a position or 2 points I think I want to make about this slide. Is number one, and we've pretty much reiterated this multiple times, is that the fitrah is a natural inclination towards belief in God. We've established that. Now, that isn't the only thing the fitrah does, but that is one of the main roles of the fitrah, is that it makes us naturally inclined to believe in God and seek God and want to be with God. And that is why, do a test. How do you feel after you remember God? How do you feel when you say astaghfirullah 100 times? How do you feel when you say astaghfirullah in the morning 100 times and in the evening 100 times? How do you feel when you say alhamdulillah 100 times? You're grateful for all the blessings of Allah and you're conscious of Allah. And how do you feel when you do it in the evening? It really relieves a lot of the worry. It brings calmness. And Allah quotes in the Quran, "Ala bi dhikrillah tatma'innul qulub." So Islam isn't just theoretical. It's very experiential. And that is why people keep coming to Islam. That is why Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. In a world where religion is gone and the remembrance of God has become scarce, and people have turned away from religion and God's name, and people need God. God's name brings us relief. The name of God, regardless of faith, remembering God brings ease. And not remembering Him brings distress and worry. And it leaves a void that nothing can fulfill but the remembrance of God. And so all of this is the fitrah. The fitrah calls us to believe in God. It calls us to connect with God. And when we do, we feel fulfilled, we feel relieved, we feel whole. And when we don't, we feel a void, we feel guilt or emptiness, and nothing can fulfill that. No amount of physical sensations and pleasures, no amount of social relationships and comfort, no amount of entertainment, no amount of drinking and drugs that numbs these feelings, no amount of noise that distracts us. Eventually, we reach a point where we're just like, what is the meaning of my life? You might, as a young person, you might not, the feeling might be suppressed by your desires because the desires are emerging and really flooding a young person. So that those desires and all the noise of the world can mute the fitrah. It suppresses it. And a person will indulge themselves in desires for a decade, 2 decades, and time passes, and when all that noise kind of goes away and those desires kind of slow down, the fitrah it kicks in. What is your purpose? Why do you exist? What do you live for? What does all of this mean? And once you lose purpose, suicide, subhanAllah, one of the contributing factors to suicide is having no purpose in life. People who are suicidal, they're very dark. Life is very dark. It's very empty. There's no purpose for them. Like, why should I even live anymore? Right? Or the pain they're experiencing is so severe that life has no meaning. There's no purpose. And so the human being needs purpose. Fitrah grants us purpose. It grants us meaning. It defines our existence and the existence of the world. It tells, and revelation really is what comes and fulfills us. The Islam comes, and that is why we were saying Islam is the most compelling answer for the purpose of life. Islam comes and it tells you your purpose of life is to worship God because God loves you, so He draws you close to Him, to raise you and bless you and reward you, not to burden you. And also, He brought you to the world to be a deputy on this earth, God's deputy on the earth, to care for it. And also, He created you so you may cultivate this world, develop it. Those are the three purposes of life in Islam. People often just think is ibadah. Ibadah is the main purpose. But there are other objectives of life. Number one is to worship God, to know Him, to be with Him, to draw close to Him. And this is a mercy, not a burden. God has created us so that we may experience Him and know Him, to bless us and reward us and draw us close to Him. It's a mercy from God, not a punishment or even a burden. And second is to be deputies of God in caring for this world. This world, there's a natural world, but this world, as we know, we see, you can create and you can manipulate the elements of this world. You can develop, you can destroy, you can build. And so God created this world with this potential to create and destroy. And so we've been created to be deputies of this earth, to make sure that good is done on the earth and evil is forbidden, and also to cultivate it. Because God created all these resources in the earth, technology, electricity, so many things we're still discovering till today. And so Allah Ta'ala created us to cultivate this world, to develop this world, and to maximize its potential. And so Islam has the most compelling answer for the purpose of life. No other religion can offer an answer as concise, as meaningful as what Islam offers. Beyond, and on top of everything else, on top of the prophetic miracles and truthfulness of the Prophet ﷺ, on top of the cohesiveness of Islamic law, on top of the alignment of Islamic law with human rationale. Islamic law, there's no aspects of Islam that doesn't make sense. It's just that some people know and some people don't. But if you were to look at Islamic law, it's very cohesive. It rationally makes sense. It works for the betterment of human beings and their interests. It's fair and upholds justice, compassionate. It's both spiritual, and social and character development. It's holistic and financial and economics. And so no religion offers what Islam offers. There's nothing even close that can come to Islam. Even previous revelations of previous prophets cannot come to the example of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Sharia that he was given. Because if you were to look at, for example, Prophet Musa ﷺ, he was never a political leader. He never ran a government. He never established a nation. He saved Bani Israel. He tried to go to Jerusalem, but his people refused. And he died, radiallahu ta'ala alayhi salam, in the 40 years in which they were in wilderness. Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, he never married. There's no aspects of his life with regards to marriage, with regards to children, with regards to politics. No. So even the shara'i', the laws of the prophets before, they're incomplete. They were preparing humanity to receive the final revelation. Keep reviving the message of God until humanity was ready to receive the final message of God that God intended for people. And that is why in the Quran Allah says, "Inna ad-deena 'inda Allah al-Islam." Indeed, the religion with Allah is al-Islam, meaning the Islam of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was the religion of God for humanity. It was just that humanity was not, it was premature to give this law to the nations before. And so human beings had to mature, grow, develop, and then they were given the final law that God had intended for humanity since the beginning. And all the prophets before were prepping humanity for that final law and final message that was going to be brought by the final messenger, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if we were to look at the example of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his prophetic teachings, there is no example in human history more, not even more complete than the Prophet ﷺ, even close to the example of the Prophet ﷺ. If you were to look, just look at his generosity. If you were just to look at his generosity, the Prophet ﷺ would give the giving of a man who fears no poverty, who does not fear poverty. Abundant giving. Once when he conquered Mecca, and all these people just recently embraced Islam, and there was all these spoils of war, the Prophet ﷺ gave them and gave them and gave them, and he said, "Are you satisfied?" When you talk about forgiveness, a people that had stoned him till they caused him to bleed, he asked Allah to forgive them because they don't know. He saw his own oppressors as victims. When it came to family, the Prophet ﷺ never yelled, never raised his voice, never hit a child, never hit a woman, never hit a servant. He was gentle, he was compassionate, he was fair. When it comes to success, on a political level, he had conquered Arabia with no interest of fighting in politics. And the whole Arabia had followed him with love. It was Amr ibn al-As who said, before he became Muslim, he said, "I have seen the kings of the world, and I have not seen a man more beloved to his people than the way Muhammad is beloved to the Sahaba, to his companions." They would compete for the droplets of his wudu when he would make wudu. They said, he said, "Where do you?" I've never seen such a thing in any place in the world. I've never seen any leader beloved by his followers to such a degree. And so, we can go through all of this, but Islam is the winner by a long shot for the purpose, for being the most compelling answer for the purpose of life, for the message of God, for how to live a moral and ethical life according to God. Nothing offers a more compelling answer than Islam does. And it is completely in line with the fitrah, and the fitrah recognizes it and accepts it. Now, unless there's arrogance, right? Because Allah Ta'ala says that what? وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. Right? Those who disbelieve and they belie our verses. وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُم. They deny it while themselves are certain about it. So arrogance is the biggest preventative that prevents people from accepting the message of God. It's ego. It's this ego, the desire to want to magnify the self, to want to prioritize the wants of the self. When a person has ego, then that is going to be the greatest obstacle to them from seeking the pleasure of God and embracing the religion of God. Ego is the root of pretty much all evil. Ego is the root of all evil. Selfishness, arrogance, pride, classism, racism, socialism, sexism, all of it is ego. It's somebody assuming themselves high, better, supreme. Right? All of the roots of, you see, all of the vices of the world, political corruption, right? All of this, it comes from ego. Financial corruption, where does it come from? Ego. It's a person magnifying themselves beyond everybody else and everything else, to the point that they are not concerned with anything except themselves. I've been talking for a bit. I would love to get some questions or even just some thoughts or feedback before I continue with the rest of the slides. Online, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in the chat. How are we doing over here? How are you guys holding up?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Assalamu alaikum, Imam.
Wa alaikum salam.
I wondered, could you expound upon the ego thing, and how do I, myself or anyone, how would we annihilate that whole ego thing? Is there a prayer, a particular prayer for that?
Yes. So the sister's question is about how do we, she said she used the term annihilate the ego. The ego cannot be removed. It's part of who we are. It's part of our humanity. So ego cannot be removed, but it can be purified. It can be disciplined. And how is that? With knowledge. With remembrance of God. And the knowledge that purifies the ego is knowledge of the soul. We're not talking about Islamic law, halal and haram, or theoretical or philosophical knowledge. We're talking about knowledge about the soul. So it's like Islamic psychology. How do you treat ego? For example, Islamic psychology analyzes, let's say, a person that mentions their favors to other people. When a person mentions their favors to other people, I did this and I do that and I've accomplished such and such things, we see that this behavior is a symptom of a greater issue. This person, first of all, has forgot Allah's favor on them, so now they're obsessed with what they've done. When a person says, I, that means they're not thinking of Allah. They're thinking of themselves abundantly. So we can see that there's an absence of Allah's remembrance in their heart. So they believe that their success is attributed to their performance. And so they believe that I should be appreciated for what I've done. I should be recognized. These are my accomplishments. It's also, there's an issue of thinking they are better than other people, and so therefore speaking down to other people, lowering other people. And so the science of tazkiyatun nafs, or suluk is what they call it, it goes through this. There's a book by Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah called Madarij al-Salikin, Stations of the Seekers, that really goes through this, and he does an excellent job talking about this. There's a shorter version called Manazil al-Sa'irin, which is also available in English, Manazil al-Sa'irin. And there's a recording, a lesson by Sheikh Hatim al-Hajj, who is a scholar in the New Jersey area. He has, I think he did an entire course that's uploaded on YouTube, Manazil al-Sa'irin. And so if you want to study the sciences of the soul and how to purify the soul, I would recommend listening to that series. I think it's a 94 lecture series, so it's pretty long. I'm actually going through it myself. I think I'm on the 12th lecture. And I've taken other books written by other scholars. Imam Ghazali has some amazing work on this subject as well. So studying those sciences on how to purify the soul, and then it has to do with knowledge, remembrance of Allah, knowledge of the self, and then engaging with the self to discipline the self, I guess. Any other questions, comments? Yes, brother.
Sheikh, you said the fitra, like within Islam, from what I don't know if you said, you said to worship Allah, to know Him, to love Him, and to grow closer to Him, to spread goodness in the world, which was the deputies part, the deputies on the...
No, so to cultivate the earth and us being deputies on the earth, that I don't know if it's part of the fitrah. It could be. It could be part of the fitrah, but this is in Sharia. In Sharia, Allah made Adam alayhi salam khalifa fil ard, right? And khalifa means a deputy or a vicegerent. So Allah made Adam the khalifa. Who is he a deputy of? He's a deputy of Allah Ta'ala. Abu Bakr is khalifa of who? Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So that's why the leader of the Muslims, he was called Khalifa. Why? Because he is the deputy of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the second Khalifa is the deputy of the previous Khalifa of the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Does that make sense? Yeah. Somebody's unmuted. I don't know if somebody has a question online.
Oh, that was a mistake. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Sisters, how are we doing? I'm just lecturing. I don't like to lecture for too long. I know it can get boring, or it might be hard to kind of keep focused. Any thoughts? I don't know. Any personal experiences? Anything that I've said maybe resonates with you? Something in your own life or or in the lives of people that you might know? Anyone? No? No pressure, no pressure. All right, we can move on, inshallah. Fitrah and morality. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah believed that the fitrah is the basis of human morality. He argues for that. He argues that it instills in individuals a natural inclination towards goodness, justice, and compassion. Fitrah acts as a moral compass, guiding individuals to distinguish between right and wrong. And this is something that everybody acknowledges, that human beings have a natural sense of morals. We have a natural sense of right and wrong. Muslims and non-Muslims alike. That's why there's kind of universal morals. Right? Why do all people love justice? Why do all societies praise compassion? Right? It's intuitive. It's part of the fitrah. The fitrah teaches us, so therefore, it's a shared belief. And this is something that Darwinism cannot answer. Right? Darwinism cannot answer. Where does morality come from? It doesn't fit into Darwin's theory. And so fitrah is a source of human, or a base for human morality. Fitrah and revelation. Ibn Taymiyyah, one of the arguments that he made, rahimahullah, was that he saw a harmonious relationship between fitrah and divine revelation. And to kind of, I think his full position is that he saw a harmonious relationship between the fitrah, reason, and divine revelation. All of these things fit well with each other. And it makes sense. Why? Who created the fitrah? God. Who created the mind? God. Who sent down religion? God. So if religion is authentic, and the mind is sound, and the fitrah is sound, there should be no contradiction between the three. Because the source is one. The source is Allah Ta'ala. Right? When we find contradiction between religion and reason, then we doubt the authenticity of the information that is being portrayed as religion. Does that make sense? Or we doubt the authenticity of the information that is being portrayed as concrete fact. Is it really a fact? Or is it just your opinion? Right? So it has to be sound mind with authentic revelation, with a sound fitrah. If those three things should work in harmony with one another, there is no contradiction between them. And that is why, subhanAllah, one of the ways this manifests in Islamic history, Muslims reached their greatest scientific achievement, or made their greatest scientific achievements when they were most religious. Contrary to other societies and other civilizations. Other civilizations were held back by religion. Religion became a detriment for the development of medicine, science, knowledge, philosophy. It got in the way of the development of those things. Whereas Islam, the history of Islam is the opposite. Our golden years were the years we were most religious. Europe, the Dark Ages were the ages where they were most religious. Very opposite. And that is why our history with religion as Muslims is very different than the Western history with religion. And they try to portray their experience as being a universal experience. All religion is this antiquated thing that prevents human progress. And therefore we should abandon religion, move forward with science and reason and evidence. No, that's your legacy. That isn't a shared truth. Our legacy is actually the complete opposite. Religion encouraged us to do mathematics. It encouraged us to pursue philosophy. We embraced Greek and Roman philosophy. Their books were translated and adopted into Islamic knowledge. Right? It wasn't a contradiction. Science was encouraged. Scientific studies were encouraged. We had psychiatric facilities. The human mind was studied, and it was not just seen as being a possession of a demon. Contrary to Muslims today, we think anything psychiatric is just some type of demonic possession. Right? Unfortunately, Allah musta'an, right? And this is a serious problem, actually, because oftentimes people have some serious psychiatric issues, and they go to the masjid for ruqya, and I'm like, you need to go see a psychiatrist. There's like a serious, they need some serious care. You don't go to the masjid for ruqya if you're dealing with a broken leg or fractured bone. You don't you go good, better. And so, subhanAllah, but Muslims actually, when they were at the peak of their scientific progress, you see that Islam propelled them to pursue the different natural sciences, right? And so, religion, all of this is to confirm what? Religion, mind, reason, and fitrah all work in harmony with one another. If the mind is sound, if it's not biased, if it's not distorted by trauma or some other factor in their culture or society, and religion is authentic, it isn't somebody presenting the religion as one way because of their own opinion. And this is something that we also have to understand, the difference between a scholarly opinion and a brute fact of religion. Those are two things as well as Muslims we have to be mindful of, right? And we oftentimes make the mistake of trusting religious figures as being infallible. They don't make mistakes. No, scholars are fallible. They make mistakes. They could make a thinking mistake. They can make a behavioral mistake. The scholars are not prophets. So, take their opinions with a grain of salt. Do your due diligence. Do your research. Investigate. Don't trust blindly, right? And on the scholar side, it's important that a scholar maintains they maintain intellectual honesty and humility, and that they maintain character in line with what they teach, because human beings by default will look at your example and will emulate your example and will define religion by the example that you set. And same thing with us as general Muslims. When non-Muslims see us, they define our religion by how we conduct ourselves. Right? So this is just human psychology. We define things by the people that portray or represent these ideas and beliefs and values. And so it's important, especially for imams and scholars, to represent what they teach authentically and correctly, and also for Muslims in general to really be an upstanding Muslim, to make sure that in public you are setting a positive example of what Islam is, because that is how they're going to define Islam, for at least majority of the people will. Moving on. All of this to say is what? Reason, revelation, and the fitrah work in harmony together. If religion is authentic, the fitrah is sound, and the mind is sound and uses sound ration. Continuing, revelation confirms and reinforces the truths already present in the fitrah, and that is what makes revelation so powerful and accepting, because it aligns with the fitrah. There's no reason to reject it. It makes sense intuitively and consciously. It makes complete sense. The fitrah validates the authenticity of revelation and helps individuals understand its teachings. Now, so the fitrah propels us to continue learning revelation. Right? That is why we're here today. Right? The fitrah in us is working. I want to learn Islam. I want to be closer to God. People always come to the masjid like, I want to learn the Quran. Right? And you wonder, what's the fitrah is driving them. It's the fitrah. The fitrah, the force of the fitrah, we could use that, right? The fitrah is driving them. I want to learn the Quran. I want to learn hadith. Why do you desire all? What is making you desire this? It isn't some type of physical sensation, because your fitrah needs it. Your fitrah craves for the worship of God and knows that knowing God's religion is essential to drawing close to God. Moving on, fitra and reason, which we talked about. We can just kind of read through this real quick. The role of reason is to acquire knowledge, but fitra, typo there, provides the foundation upon which reason operates. Reason can be used to elaborate. Keyword here, elaborate and expand upon the intuitive knowledge provided by the fitra. So the fitra provides us like a base, and then knowledge, the reason, expands on that. We expand on the knowledge of the fitra. And that is why, fitra is not enough, right? If fitra was enough for us to fulfill our obligation with Allah, then revelation would not be required. So the fitra is a vessel, kind of gives us, or not a vessel, but it's the base. It gives us what we need, and then revelation is really what allows us to expand and elaborate on that. Fitra, reason, and undistorted divine revelation work in unison with each other, each playing an important role. The corruption and purification of fitra. This is important. Fitra can be corrupted by external forces such as societal pressures, desires, and false beliefs. Such as we said, a young person when they're in their teens, in their early 20s or in their 20s, their hormones are flooding, and their desires are overwhelming, emotions overwhelming, and so that their fitra might be somewhat impacted at that time. We can see that the fitra of children is the most pure. Children have an unbiased belief and love for God. And it's adults that kind of either cultivate that or they traumatize them and really leave a bad impression of religion on them, right? And so we have to make sure, especially when we deal with children, we leave a good impression on them about Allah Ta'ala, the love of Allah and the love of the Prophet ﷺ, because they have a natural desire for it. It's untainted. It's pure and untainted. And so it's important that parents, along with teachers, and actually, a lot of the people that turn away from religion, even Muslims, they turn away because of trauma caused to them by some type of religious figure in their life. Or just by family. My family uses religion to manipulate me, make me feel guilty like I'm a demon or something. Or the people at the mosque or non-Muslim at the church or wherever else were always talking of a vengeful God who was going to punish me and send me to hell if I wasn't a good kid. Or so many examples, right? So the fitra can be corrupted. It can be very distorted. Society as well. Society today pressures people to disbelieve in God, and so that's a societal pressure. Right now, if you were to go to one of the major universities of really any state now, the public universities, to believe in God is actually frowned upon. It's frowned upon. It's really there's a sense of shame. It's you talk about God, what's wrong with you talking about God, right? So you can see societal pressure today is raising a generation of they're corrupting the fitra of the young next generation. And so right now I think atheism, or not atheism, they call them the nuns. They don't adopt any religion. Some of them might believe in a higher being, but they don't adopt any religion. So a term that's used oftentimes is nuns, or another term that is used is monotheistic, therapeutic, or not moral therapeutic deitism, where they believe in morality as a form of therapy for the mind. We need morals to cope, to give us meaning. Like I mentioned, the person who said earlier, what? She said, this was earlier today, this afternoon. She's like, kindness is my religion. She's like, that's, So there's some type of I need to have morals because it's therapeutic. It makes, I'm going to go insane without some type of morals, right? And so, but they say, and they have a deism. They believe in a higher power, so they don't have a problem believing in a higher power. And this is on an upward trend. I think right now, 50% of youth are more inclined towards this. Muslims, statistics say that 1 in every 4 born Muslim children end up leaving Islam. So societal pressures is corrupting the fitrah of youth, of children growing up in Western societies especially, and around the globe. If you go to like Europe, past parts of Europe, the Netherlands, Sweden, like atheism is like at 70%, 80% now of society is atheistic, and so or agnostic, and so it's a societal pressures can really corrupt the fitrah. It can really corrupt our intuition, and not just the fitrah, even like because the fitrah is not just this, even like morality on sex and reproduction and gender identity and so on and so forth. These things which were considered intuition, like you're a boy, it's clear. Like from the moment you're born, you're a girl, it's clear. And even that kind of intuitive knowledge that humanity agreed upon, is now somewhat, false. And from young age they're being conditioned. So the human fitrah is being corrupted, just gradually. Little by little. And this is the Dajjal at the end of time. The Prophet ﷺ foretold, and all prophets have warned, that there's no greater tribulation or trial to happen in this world than Dajjal. What does Dajjal mean? Dajjal means the one that misleads. So Dajjal will create an upside down world. I think is how I like to term and use. He'll create a world where everything is upside down. Belief in God was virtuous, now it's frowned upon. More family, keeping sexuality private and not publicizing it. Sexual ethics was private, it was seen as something sacred, you don't publicize it. At the end of time, people will be committing sexual acts in public, and we even see right now, there's a whole movement about like making nudity something like normal, and there's nude, parades and things like that. That's becoming widespread and gaining really a following. And so Dajjal, the Prophet also said that the truthful ones will be labeled as liars, and the liars will be labeled as truthful. And so there will be a corruption, widespread political corruption and leadership, corruption in leadership, where those who are the most corrupt and liars of society will be the ones in power, in position of power, and they will be trusted, and those who are honest will be labeled as extremists or ignorant or whatever else label they might use. And so all of this is to say what societal pressures, desires, false beliefs can all corrupt the fitrah. And the Prophet ﷺ stated this in the hadith. What did he say? Every child is born upon fitrah. Then their parents turn them to a Christian, a Jew, or a Zoroastrian, which is like the religion of Zoroastrians. Like past, it was like Persia. That was the religion they adopted, fire worshippers. But that was there's more to their theology than just that. But so the Prophet ﷺ is showing that the fitrah can be corrupted. It can be tainted by human conditioning. It can be tainted by human conditioning. A corrupt fitrah can lead to deviation from the truth and moral misguidance. Purification of the fitrah is achieved through adherence to Islamic teachings, reflection, and seeking knowledge. And we talked a little bit about how to purify the soul and the purification of the soul. The ego, that's a whole science that I think we need to really pay more attention to. We need to not just worship gods because at times of distress. Most of humanity, unfortunately, only come to God when they're in distress. And as soon as distress is gone, they turn back to their norms and habits. And so we need to understand that our spirituality shouldn't rely on calamities. Us coming close to Allah shouldn't rely on some, catastrophe in our lives. Allah's right and is greater than that. And so becoming steadfast with religion, purifying the soul, and upon prophetic teachings. Moving on. So here we're going to get into some of the rational stuff. I'm just going to maybe try to breeze through it. Fitrah and philosophical arguments. So I mentioned that Ibn Taymiyyah, his position on, so before I share that, our scholars of Aqidah, of theology, adopted two positions on nurturing conviction in God. The first position is the position of the traditionalists, the Atharis, regarding the Fitrah champion by Ibn Taymiyyah, who rely on Fitrah and revelation. The second position is the position of Ahl al-Kalam, and Kalam is kind of like the philosophy of Islamic theology. They rely heavily on reason. So Ibn Taymiyyah, he is anti-ilm al-Kalam, the science of Kalam. He doesn't like it. He said it's redundant, it's too complex, it's overwhelming, the average person can't understand it. You shouldn't study ilm al-Kalam. Sometimes it can be actually detrimental. He discouraged people to study from ilm al-Kalam. He would adopt it if it was beneficial. Maybe if there was somebody who needed to study ilm al-Kalam to remove doubts, he would say that's fine, you can engage them with that. But he didn't like adopting ilm al-Kalam with the general population of the Muslims. That was his position. The other position, the scholars of ilm al-Kalam, which are actually the majority of the ummah, the majority of the scholars, by a wide margin, maybe 80%, adopt ilm al-Kalam. They say the reason is important because Islam, Iman has to be based on rational convictions. Does that make sense? And so there's these two positions of theology, ilm al-Kalam and Atharis, which are traditionalists. And so both schools are respected Ahl Sunnah schools. And so Ibn Taymiyyah was really anti-ilm al-Kalam. He was a fierce opponent of it to a large extent. And so those who follow in his practice are anti-ilm al-Kalam. They really don't like ilm al-Kalam and discourage it. For our purpose, we're going to adopt some aspects of ilm al-Kalam. We're going to adopt some aspects. Maybe 2 or 3 aspects of argument for belief in God, and then some issues that are actually not really ilm al-Kalam heavy. And so we will adopt some issues from ilm al-Kalam just for the purpose of rationale and establishing a good, logical, rational argument beyond the fitrah. Does that make sense? And I believe that those knowledge, the knowledge of the Kalam arguments will complement the knowledge of the fitrah. And that's kind of our intent. We should be getting into those lessons in our next lecture, inshallah ta'ala. How are we doing? How's everybody doing? Huh? It's a lot of lecturing. I'm like, man, how are they, keeping up? You guys, should we do a break? We should maybe take a break some in between, yeah? Maybe 5-10 minute break. Yeah.
During Sahaba, they believe they were rational with the, reason.
Yep.
Why the opposite?
So here Brother Karana is asking, did Sahaba radiallahu anhum use rationale? That's a big discussion. Of course, rationale is used. It's just to what extent? To what extent do we use? Because the Quran uses rationale. It uses logical arguments, and so it's just to what extent do you use it? And so it's more about, I think, methodology and how to use it and how much attention we should give to it. And so, yeah, there's this whole thing about, I guess to simplify that, this whole thing about how much rationale should we use and when should we stop and just rely on tradition and be like, hey, this is revelation, this is tradition. We don't need to get into reason and too much, logic. And so that's kind of the disagreement. It's a very old the issue. It's actually very old. It goes back to the days of Imam Shafi'i and Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, and even before that. Yeah, so it's a very old issue, and until today, there's still a disagreement among the scholars. But what I try to preach is respect. Understand that these are two respectable positions of our scholars. This is the majority, this is the minority, but they're all respectable, and there's good in all of them. And so we adopt it where it's beneficial, and we refrain from the things that are really not beneficial. That's kind of my position, while respecting all scholars. Wallahu a'lam. But I'll suffice with that. I don't want to get too much into the debates between the two parties. Okay. let's move on. I guess we have about 12 minutes, so we can try to go through these slides real quick. Ibn Taymiyyah's position on fitrah can be seen as a response to philosophical arguments for the existence of God, while kalam and Western philosophical arguments rely on reason and observation. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah emphasizes the importance of innate and intuitive nature of belief in God. Fitrah provides a more direct and accessible path to recognizing God's existence than complex philosophical proofs. That's kind of the gist of his argument, rahimahullah. So here are some of the kalam arguments, and we're going to get into this. We're going to learn about the cosmological argument. Here he says the cosmological argument argues for God's existence based on the idea that everything must have a cause. That's the kalam cosmological argument. That everything must have a cause, so therefore the entire cosmos, the entire reality has to have a cause. Does that make sense? Everything has a cause. And so Darwin's theory doesn't answer that issue. Even if you say human beings evolved, what caused them to evolve? What caused the world to exist? What caused the entire universe with all the planets and the stars and the galaxies and the solar systems and what caused all of this to exist? There's a Big Bang. What caused the Big Bang? Nothing. Is that an answer? Nothing caused something? The absence of everything caused something? When does absence create? When does zero create one? It doesn't. It's not rational. It's impossible. But you can say it's impossible with everything in life, but you believe it's possible with the existence of all life. It's irrational. That's kind of the kalam cosmological argument. It gets into a really philosophical structure, which we will get into. And so that's the kalam cosmological argument. And now he says fitrah resonates with this argument. Of course, this is intuitive. You don't need to learn philosophy to know that. A kid knows that. Right? Who created everything? God created everything. A kid knows that. So, like, even the kids know this. Like, it's intuitive, right? And so he says that fitrah resonates with this argument, as it recognizes the created nature of the universe and the necessity of a creator. Fitrah recognizes it makes sense, and so on. Now, we're going to get into the issue. Well, if everything has a cause and the necessary creator. But then how did the necessary creator exist? And so that's the shubha, that's the doubt that could come to the mind. And we're going to get into that and how we answer that from a rational perspective. But regardless of that, our conviction in God is the same. It's just there's one aspect we don't understand. We don't understand God's existence independent of a cause. Does that make sense? So that's kind of the question, right? God's existence independent of a cause. And how do we rationalize that? So we'll talk about that later. Here he says, however, fitrah offers a more immediate and intuitive understanding of this truth than the complex chain of reasoning in the cosmological argument. All right, moving on. The moral argument and fitrah, quickly. The moral argument suggests the existence of objective moral values and duties implies a moral lawgiver. Like we said, right, there's a universal morals that we all share as human beings. Compassion, justice, right, and so on and so forth. And so since there is this universal morality that human beings share, then there has to be a moral lawgiver. Somebody made these rules exist in all of us. Fitrah strongly supports this argument as it is the source of innate moral consciousness. The fitrah provides individuals with a natural sense of right and wrong, reinforcing the idea of a divine source for morality. Moving on. Argument from consciousness and fitrah. The argument from consciousness proposes, this is the third argument, that human consciousness indicates the existence of a conscious creator. Right? So we're conscious. We have this awareness of ourselves, of our world, and so on and so forth. And so us being conscious means that we have a conscious creator who gave us the ability to be conscious, to be aware. Fitrah aligns with this argument as it is seen as a manifestation of divine consciousness within humans. The fitrah allows individuals to experience a connection with the divine, supporting the idea of a conscious creator, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Argument from transcendence and fitrah. The argument from transcendence suggests that our reliance on universal concepts like logic, reason, and morality points to a higher power. Fitrah resonates with this argument as it is the source of these innate universal concepts. Right? This is interesting. The fitrah has these concepts. Remember, we said fitrah is just more than belief in God. We know God, we believe in one God, Tawheed. We believe in many of God's attributes, subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe in, the fitrah has qualities of logic, deducing things, coming to conclusions, reason, we can reason things. There's subconscious and conscious ability to reason. You know, there are, subhanAllah, this is one of the things that actually really amazes me about the human being. Our fitrah can sense when something is wrong, even when we haven't consciously processed it. A natural sense of right and wrong, even if we haven't morally processed it. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. I'm not going to explain to you, you should know this is wrong, right, type of thing. There's this natural intelligence of right and wrong, of reason, of logic, of morality, and this all points to a higher power. Who placed this in us? We didn't create it. We didn't place it. And it's in all human beings. It's a shared quality by humans. Some people have it more than others. Some people's sense of perception, some people, especially a lot of the righteous and people of spirituality, from different faiths even, have a great insight. They can sense things from a mile away. They can sense good and evil in people. They can tell this person, and subhanAllah, this is before Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. One time he was known as a man who mastered firasa. And his firasa, this is this intuitive knowledge of people. And so Imam Shafi'i, he looked at a man, and him and this other scholar were looking at people and kind of seeing what their initial intuitions about them were. Imam Shafi'i, he looked at a man and he said, this man, I'm not sure if he's a tailor or a carpenter. I sense that he's either a tailor or a carpenter, but I'm not sure. So they later questioned the man. He said, I used to be a tailor, then now and then switched to carpentry. To that extent. And this is a science also in Eastern Asia, in Buddhist traditions, that they've really mastered as well. They have a history of this, where they can really read personalities and character traits based off of intuition. We're not talking about physical signs like your hands or how rough your hands are or whatever, what you wear. No, we're talking about just intuition based off of the vibe, the sense that you receive from this person. You have an intuition of what this person is. This is part of the fitrah. This is a quality that the fitrah has, and it can be developed. It's a science that people have developed, and many of the spiritual sages of different religions, because it's not something exclusive to religion. It's something that needs deep insight. You have to be somebody very morally, spiritually very conscious. And once you have that deep consciousness of your own spirituality and morality, you start to get a sense of other people's without even interacting. You can sense it and feel it. And so there's a connection between souls. Another manifestation of this is that the Prophet ﷺ said, the souls were gathered like an army, al-arwah junudun mujannada. They were gathered like soldiers at a camp before this world. And whatever of the souls got along in the world before will connect and get along with each other today. And whatever of the souls did not get along with each other before will disconnect and find discomfort with each other in this world. And subhanAllah, this is also found that there are certain people we encounter. At a first glance, we feel this unique connection or resemblance, intuitive connection with them. We share something with them. We can't pinpoint what it is. You kind of pause for a moment, and you just move on because they're strangers. Awkward, right? You can't be like, right, who are you, right? How do I know you? But somebody might, who knows? But right, but we feel, and this is a shared phenomenon, like human beings have reported this around the world. I'm pretty sure many of you here have had an experience with one or two individuals like that, where you're just like, whoa, like, I feel like I know you, although I know I've never met you, right? This is also part of the fitrah. The soul retained knowledge of that experience of the past, and it transferred with the soul into this world. So the fitrah is very complex. It's very interesting. There's so much innate knowledge that it has. And so here, Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he argues that the fitrah resonates with the argument of transcendence because it is a source of these innate universal concepts. The fitrah provides, I'm going to get to your question. The fitrah provides individuals with a natural understanding of these transcendent truths, supporting the existence of a higher power. And you had a question.
What's the line between judgmental and
Judgmental and fitrah?
yeah, like being judgmental, like saying like, oh, like that person just looks like this, but you're saying like you can just tell you have.
So judgment is you're using some type of rationale. You're using a logical process, right? You saw something, for example, how they dress, how they talk, how they act, whatever, their attitude, their face, you're making a judgment based on observable facts. Is that clear? That's like, you can like, this person's nervous. You can see the nervousness on their face. This person looks guilty. You ask them a question, like, oh, the kid, right? Like, you're the one they can see the guilt on their face, right? So there are signs. It's observable. You can measure something, and then you make a judgment. So that's judgment. The firasa, which is this intuition to read people, it doesn't heavily rely on these signs. It could rely on just natural qualities, but not behavioral expressions. Does that make sense? So I think that would be kind of one of the major differences. Wallahu alam. Okay, just moving on. I want to wrap up. Fitrah, argument from beauty and fitrah. The argument from beauty proposes the existence of beauty in the world points to a divine creator who appreciates and creates beauty. This is the argument from beauty. This is a philosophical argument. So they say that the existence of beauty shows that there's a creator who appreciates beauty. So therefore, and the Ibn Taymiyyah's fitrah argument supports this argument as it allows individuals to intuitively perceive and appreciate beauty. We all intuitively appreciate beauty. We appreciate beautiful things, good smells, so on and so forth. It's part of the fitrah. The fitrah enables individuals to recognize the aesthetic dimension of creation, reinforcing the idea of a divine creator who values beauty. Another argument, fitrah as a counter-narrative to atheism. The concept of fitrah challenges the notion of humans as blank slate. This is very important. This is actually one of the arguments against atheism. Because atheists believe that the humans are just born as a blank slate, that we're just, it's all conditioning. It's all nurture. And actually, psychology completely disagrees. Right? They're like, no, there's nature. We add more. We say there's fitrah, nature, and nurture. Does that make sense, right? So there's nature, which is your genetics, and there's fitrah, which is interacting with your genetics. The fitrah isn't independent of your genetics. It's interacting with your genetics, because your soul and your body are interacting. So the fitrah interacts with your genetics, your genes, and then all of that interacts with your environment, which is your nurture. Your home, your parents, your upbringing, your larger community, your society, your economic opportunities or restrictions, all of this is interacting with each other and impacting each other. One of the arguments that atheists try to make is they say the human is a blank slate, which is completely false, and I think it's something that is obviously false, that everybody would agree upon, that we are born with natural qualities. Fitrah asserts that humans are born with an innate inclination towards belief in God, countering the idea that belief is solely a product of experiencing or social conditioning. I shared the story of the atheist couple who had a child who was a theist who believed in God. All of this is to show that what fitrah is natural and intuitive. Yes? Oh, I didn't move on. I am so sorry. There we go. That's what I wanted. All right, that's what I'm reading from. Fitrah is a counter narrative to atheism. So we read the second point. The fitrah asserts that humans are born with an innate inclination towards belief in God, countering the idea that belief is solely a product of experience and social conditioning. Lastly, this innate inclination serves as a natural counter-argument to atheism, suggesting that disbelief in God is a deviation from the natural state of human beings. Recently, a study by Oxford confirmed that human beings believe in God by default. This is a scientific study. Now, we don't need science to prove intuition. It's like, I don't need science to tell me I'm hungry. I know what hunger feels like. Does that make sense? I don't need science to tell me I naturally believe in God because I experience it. I've experienced it since I was a kid, and I see it in everybody around me. I experience it when I pray and I worship God and I make zikr and I seek forgiveness. I see how fulfilling that is. Does that make sense? So we don't need the science to confirm what is already intuition. But having these scientific studies support what we intuitively know is a plus, right? Like, it's like, oh, that, like, it even reassures us even more, right? But we don't need it. We have intuition and we have the fitrah and we have revelation. The Prophet ﷺ said it. Allah Ta'ala said it, right? And so we're dealing with an audience of Muslims who have belief. Some might have, there might be shubhat with some, but we have that. Like this was said by the Prophet ﷺ. So we have that belief. We also have the intuition, which we are certain of. What more can you be certain of that which you intuitively feel? Your senses, right? And so scientific studies, alhamdulillah, affirm that, which is great. Yes?
Sorry, how would you explain then people who don't have the innate sense of morality, right? Because there's some people that are truly evil.
No. So the sister asked, how would we explain a person who doesn't have an innate sense of morality? I mentioned in our last lecture that fitrah is like IQ. Somebody can have high IQ fitrah and low IQ of fitrah. So some people's fitrah can just be a lot more intuitive, a lot more correct than other people. And other people's fitrah might be a lot less. But we all have it. We all have some sense of fitrah. There is no human being that's a blank slate.
I mean, there's people that are born with no emotions, right? Like a sociopath, for example.
Yes.
Would they be an exception?
Even them, they would have a sense of fitrah of like believing in God. Maybe their ability to have empathy might be compromised, right, or defective, but they still have other aspects of fitrah, rationale, logic. This is all part of fitrah. You can be missing some aspects of fitrah while having other aspects. Yeah. And then the other aspect, actually, biology is important, right? Because if somebody is mentally disabled, then they can't actualize their fitrah. Because you need the conscious to process the fitrah, to on a conscious level, right? So it's connected. You do need, a healthy, mind to process the fitrah. And as long as a person has sanity, or at least mentally healthy to a sanity, they should be able to have some aspects of the fitrah. Unless they're completely mentally disabled, then at that point they lack the fundamental quality of being able to process those innate qualities. Does that satisfy your question? Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, we are wrapping up. Sorry, we're 5 minutes over. Just gonna try to fitrah, and where are we at? Fitrah in the modern world? Okay, yeah. In the modern world, characterized by secularism, materialism, the concept of fitrah offers a refreshing perspective on human nature and spirituality. Fitrah reminds individuals of their innate connection to the divine and their inherent capacity for goodness even in the midst of a secular culture. By recognizing and nurturing fitrah, individuals can find meaning, purpose, and moral guidance in an increasingly complex and challenging world. Going on, implications for contemporary discourse. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah's concept of fitrah offers a valuable perspective in the ongoing dialogue between faith and reason. It provides a counter-narrative to atheistic arguments by emphasizing the innate human inclination towards belief in God. And I think this is one of the most powerful ways to actually deal with atheists. It's like we're not even going to get into the philosophical arguments. right? Human beings, like you naturally have this desire for God. Let's explore that, right, and understand that. Fitra can serve also as a common ground for interfaith dialogue. I shared the experience today, right, with this non-Muslim woman, as it highlights the shared human experience of seeking truth and meaning. Conclusion, Ibn Taymiyyah's emphasis on fitra as a source of knowledge and a foundation for morality has profound implications for Islamic thought and education. By recognizing the fitra within ourselves and others, we can foster a deep understanding of our purpose in life and our relationship with God. The concept of fitra serves as a reminder of our innate goodness and our potential for spiritual growth and moral development. That is, oh, sorry, I didn't even move. But that's everything. I was just kind of speeding through the rest of it. But if you have any questions, I would love to take your questions, and then we can conclude, inshallah.